in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, where luxury dripped from every marble column and crystal chandelier, lived what everyone believed to be the perfect couple. Marcus Sterling, a distinguished investment banker with salt and pepper hair that caught the light just right, and his wife Elena, a vision of grace with emerald eyes that could stop traffic and a smile that had graced the covers of society magazines. Their penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue was nothing short of a palace. 18-foot ceilings soared above imported Italian marble floors, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Central Park. Every piece of furniture was carefully selected, every painting strategically placed. It was the kind of home that whispered wealth without ever having to shout it. Marcus Sterling was the kind of man who commanded respect the moment he walked into a room. At 45, he had built an empire in the financial world, his sharp mind and calculated risks making him millions. His tailored suits, always perfectly pressed, his Italian leather shoes that gleamed like mirrors, and his confident stride spoke of a man who had conquered his world. Friends often joked that Marcus had the Midas touch. Everything he touched turned to gold. But it was Elena who truly made heads turn. At 38, she possessed a timeless beauty that seemed to defy age itself. Her long, auburn hair cascaded down her shoulders like silk, and she moved with the elegance of a dancer. Elena had given up her promising career as an interior designer when she married Marcus 5 years ago, choosing instead to dedicate herself to being the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect companion to a man who seemed to have everything. Their social circle was the envy of New York's elite. They attended the most exclusive charity galas, where Elena would glide across the room in designer gowns that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Marcus would stand beside her, his hand possessively on her waist, as they smiled for photographers and made small talk with senators, celebrities, and fellow millionaires. Look at them. People would whisper at these events. They're like something out of a fairy tale. And it was true. When Marcus looked at Elena, his eyes would soften in a way that made even the most cynical observers believe in true love. When Elena laughed at his jokes, her whole face would light up with genuine joy. They seemed to move in perfect synchronization, finishing each other's sentences, sharing secret glances across crowded rooms. But in every grand mansion, there are those who see beyond the polished surface, those who witness the moments when the masks slip, when the performance ends and reality bleeds through the carefully constructed facade. Carmen Rodriguez had been working for the Sterling family for 3 years. At 52, she had weathered many storms in her life, from fleeing poverty in her native Guatemala to raising 2 children as a single mother in Queens. Her hands were the calluses of hard work, and her dark eyes held the wisdom of someone who had learned to observe, to listen, and most importantly, to survive. Carmen was more than just a housekeeper to the Sterlings. She was invisible in the way that domestic workers often become to the wealthy. She moved through their home like a ghost, cleaning their messes, preparing their meals, and maintaining perfection that their public image demanded. But being invisible had its advantages. People said things around Carmen that they would never dare say in front of their equals. They acted in ways they assumed would never be witnessed or remembered. And Carmen remembered everything. She remembered the first time she noticed a change in Marcus. It had been 6 months ago, on a Tuesday morning when Elena had left early for her yoga class. Carmen was dusting the bookshelves in Marcus's study when his phone buzzed. She watched as his expression shifted when he read the message, the way his lips curved into a smile she had never seen him give Elena, the way he quickly typed back, his fingers moving with an urgency that suggested forbidden excitement. Over the weeks that followed, Carmen began to notice patterns. The hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when Elena entered the room. The expensive jewelry purchases that never appeared on Elena's neck or wrists. The sudden increase in business trips that required Marcus to stay overnight in the city, even though his office was only 30 minutes away. Carmen's heart ached as she watched Elena move through their home, completely oblivious to betrayal happening right under her nose. Elena would hum while arranging fresh flowers, her face glowing with contentment as she planned surprise dinner for Marcus or picked out the perfect wine to celebrate his latest business victory. She spoke of him with such love, such trust, that it made Carmen's stomach churn with the weight of her secret knowledge. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago, when Carmen accidentally walked into the master bedroom while looking for Elena's dry cleaning. The room was empty. Elena had gone to her book club meeting, but Marcus's laptop was open on the bed, forgotten in his haste to shower before Elena returned. The screen displayed a message thread that made Carmen's blood run cold. "Missing you already, baby. Can't wait until she goes on her spa retreat next month. We'll have the whole weekend." The response had come quickly. "Count on it, darling." I'm already planning what I want to do to you in that big bed of hers. Carmen had closed the laptop immediately, her hands shaking, but the damage was done. She now had confirmation of what she had feared for months. Marcus Sterling, the man who stood before crowds and spoke eloquently about integrity and family values, was cheating on his devoted wife. The woman's name was Victoria Chun, as Carmen would later discover from glimpses of other messages and overheard phone conversations. She was Marcus's assistant at the investment firm, young, ambitious, and apparently completely willing to destroy another woman's marriage for her own advancement. For weeks, Carmen had carried this burden alone. She would wake up at night, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment in Queens, wondering what she should do. Elena treated her with kindness and respect, something that had been rare in Carmen's previous employment. Elena remembered her birthday, asked about her children, and even helped Carmen's daughter with college application essays. How could she protect Elena from this betrayal without destroying her own livelihood? Carmen had bills to pay, children to support, and jobs like this one, with decent pay and reasonable employers, were not easy to find. But watching Elena's innocent happiness felt like watching someone walk unknowingly toward the edge of a cliff. Every loving gesture Elena made toward Marcus, every surprise she planned, every time she spoke proudly of their marriage to friends, Carmen felt complicit in the deception. The guilt was eating her alive. It was on this particular Friday afternoon that fate would finally force Carmen's hand. Elena had been preparing for her annual spa retreat to California, a week-long wellness journey that she took every year to recharge and reconnect with herself. She had been excited about it for months, showing Carmen brochures of the resort and talking about the meditation classes she wanted to try. It'll be so good for Marcus to have some alone time, too, Elena had said while packing her suitcase that morning. He's been working so hard lately. Maybe he'll actually relax for once when I'm gone. Carmen had nodded silently, knowing exactly how Marcus planned to spend his relaxation time. As Elena's car pulled away from the building that afternoon, headed to JFK Airport, Carmen felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her chest like a stone. She moved through her cleaning routine mechanically, her mind racing with impossible decisions. That's when Marcus's phone rang in his study. He had forgotten it in his rush to a lunch meeting, and Carmen could hear it buzzing insistently from the kitchen. After several minutes of continuous ringing, she walked over to see if it was an emergency. The name on the screen made her stomach drop. Victoria, my love, with a heart emoji. Carmen stared at that phone, watching it ring with a message that felt like a countdown timer. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She would not let Elena return from her retreat to discover this betrayal the way so many wives did, through whispers and sideways glances from friends who had known all along. If Elena was going to face this truth, she deserved to face it on her own terms, with dignity and the power to choose her own response. Carmen set down her cleaning supplies and reached for her own phone. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through her contacts to find Elena's number. This was it, the moment that would either save a marriage or destroy it completely. But Carmen had learned long ago that sometimes destruction was the only path to truth. And Elena Sterling deserved the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. What would you do if you were Carmen? Would you stay silent to protect your job, or risk everything to save someone you care about? Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that define who we really are. Elena Sterling was supposed to be 3,000 miles away, breathing in the sage-scented air of a Californian wellness retreat, when Carmen's call reached her at 3:47 p.m. Pacific time. Elena had been in the middle of a mindfulness meditation session, her phone silenced and tucked away in her room, when something called intuition, call it fate, compelled her to check her messages during the afternoon break. Carmen's voice on the voicemail was strained, careful, but urgent. Mrs. Sterling, I need to speak with you privately. It's important, very important. Please call me when you're alone. Elena's heart had immediately begun racing. In 3 years of employment, Carmen had never called her, ever. The housekeeper was nothing if not professional, respectful of boundaries, never one to blur the lines between employer and employee. For her to reach out like this, something had to be terribly wrong. Elena found a quiet corner of the resort's garden, surrounded by towering eucalyptus trees, and called Carmen back with shaking fingers. Carmen? What's wrong? Is there an emergency? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Elena could hear Carmen's labored breathing. When Carmen finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Mrs. Sterling, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I can't stay quiet anymore. You've been so good to me, so kind, and I can't watch this happen to you. Watch what happened? Carmen, you're scaring me. Another pause. Then, it's Mr. Sterling. He's not the man you think he is. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She sank onto a nearby stone bench, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. What do you mean? There's another woman. Her name is Victoria. She works at his company. Mrs. Sterling, I've seen messages. I've heard phone calls. They've been together for months. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Elena gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles went white. The sounds of the retreat, birds chirping, wind rustling through leaves, distant laughter from other guests, faded into a surreal buzz. That can't be true. Marcus would never. But even as she said the words, pieces began falling into place. The late nights, the business trips, the way he'd started guarding his phone, the distance that had grown between them in recent months that she'd attributed to work stress. I have proof, Carmen said quietly. I've seen the messages on his laptop. I've heard him talking to her. When you're not there. Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you sooner. But I was scared. I was a coward. Elena felt hot tears streaming down her cheeks. Around her, the peaceful retreat continued, as if her entire world hadn't just shattered. A couple walked by, holding hands and laughing, and she wanted to scream at the cruel irony. Where are you now? Elena managed to ask. At your apartment. Mr. Sterling is at work, but he's been making plans. For while you're away. The betrayal cut deeper. Not only was Marcus cheating, but he was planning to bring this woman, Victoria, into their home, into their bed, while Elena was away, trusting him, missing him. I'm coming home, Elena said, her voice steadying as shock gave way to cold determination. Mrs. Sterling, maybe you should think. I'm coming home, Carmen. Tonight. Elena Sterling had built her life around being the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect companion. She had sublimated her own career ambitions, her own desires, her own dreams to create the flawless image that she thought Marcus deserved. She had trusted completely, loved unconditionally, and supported without question. And this was how he repaid her. The flight back to New York felt endless. Elena sat in first class, staring out the window at clouds that looked like cotton balls against an impossibly blue sky, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. The naive, trusting woman who had boarded a plane to California just days ago was gone. In her place sat someone harder, someone who had been betrayed by the person she trusted most in the world. She spent the flight time thinking, planning. A part of her wanted to confront Marcus immediately, to scream and throw things and demand answers. But a cooler, more calculating part of her, a part she didn't know existed until now, wanted something more than just a confession. She wanted the whole truth. She wanted to see the depth of his deception with her own eyes. By the time her plane touched down at JFK at 11:30 p.m., Elena had made her decision. Carmen was waiting for her in the penthouse, her usually composed face etched with worry and guilt. The moment Elena walked through the door, Carmen rushed toward her. Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I know I should have told you sooner. I know I should have. Elena held up a hand, stopping her. Carmen, you did the right thing. Don't apologize for having integrity when my own husband doesn't. She looked around their apartment, with its perfect furniture and perfect art and perfect facade, and felt sick. How many times had Marcus brought this Victoria here? How many lies had he told standing in this very room? Tell me everything, Elena said, setting down her suitcase and facing Carmen directly. I need to know all of it. For the next hour, Carmen laid out the full scope of Marcus's betrayal. The messages she'd seen, the phone calls she'd overheard, the expensive gift that had appeared and disappeared. Victoria Chun, 28 years old, ambitious and beautiful, who had started as Marcus's assistant 2 years ago and had clearly worked her way up to much more than filing his paperwork. She's coming here tomorrow, Carmen said quietly. I overheard him on the phone today, making plans. He thinks he'll be gone for the whole week. Elena felt her jaw clench. Tomorrow? Yes. He told her to come around noon. He's planning to cook for her, using your kitchen, your groceries. He even bought champagne, Dom Perignon. It's in the refrigerator now. The audacity of it was staggering. Not only was Marcus cheating, but he was doing it in their home, with their things, creating romantic moments with another woman in the space where Elena had built their life together. Mrs. Sterling, Carmen said hesitantly, what are you going to do? Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the glittering lights of Manhattan. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably texting with Victoria. planning their romantic afternoon, believing he had successfully deceived his wife once again. She thought about all the times she had defended him to friends who made jokes about wandering husbands. All the times she had bragged about how lucky she was to have found a man like Marcus. All the times she had turned down invitations and opportunities because she wanted to be home for him, to support his career, to be the perfect wife. "I want to see it," Elena said finally. "I want to see them together. I want to witness his betrayal with my own eyes so that when I confront him, he can't deny it, can't minimize it, can't make me question what I know to be true." Carmen looked confused. "But Mrs. Sterling, how? If you're here when she arrives." "I won't be Elena Sterling when she arrives," Elena said, turning back to Carmen with a look of grim determination. "Tell me, Carmen, what does Victoria know about you?" "About me? Nothing, I think. I've never met her. When Mr. Sterling talks to her on the phone, he usually goes into his study and closes a door." Elena nodded slowly, an idea forming. It was audacious, risky, and completely unlike anything she had ever done before. But desperate times call for desperate measures. "Carmen, I need your help. And I need you to trust me, even if what I'm asking seems crazy." Carmen straightened up, her dark eyes meeting Elena's with surprising resolve. "Mrs. Sterling, after what I've seen Mr. Sterling do to you, I'll help you with anything you need." Elena took a deep breath. "Tomorrow, when Victoria comes here, she's going to think you called in sick. Instead, she's going to meet a new housekeeper, someone Marcus hired temporarily to fill in while you're away." Carmen's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You want to pretend to be the maid? I want to be invisible the way you've been invisible. I want to see how my husband acts when he thinks no one who matters is watching. I want to see how this woman behaves in my home when she thinks the wife is safely out of the way." It was a crazy plan. Elena Sterling had never cleaned a house in her life, never taken orders from anyone, never made herself small or subservient. She was used to being the center of attention, the lady of the manor, the woman everyone else sought to please. But she was also a woman who had just discovered that her entire marriage was a lie. And sometimes, the only way to uncover the truth was to become someone else entirely. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Sterling?" Carmen asked. "It could be humiliating." Elena thought about that word. Humiliating. Yes, it would be humiliating to pretend to be a servant in her own home. But not nearly as humiliating as being a fool who never saw her husband's betrayal coming. "Carmen," Elena said, her voice steady and cold, "I've been humiliated for months without even knowing it. At least this way, I'll be in control of the situation." She walked to her closet and began pulling out simple clothes. Things she could wear that would make her look like hired help rather than the mistress of the house. As she changed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Gone was the polished socialite who had left for California. In her place stood a woman with fire in her eyes and steel in her spine. "Tomorrow," Elena said, "Marcus Sterling is going to learn that there are consequences for betraying the people who love you. And Victoria Chin is going to discover that sometimes the help sees everything." Carmen nodded, but Elena could see the worry in her eyes. What if something goes wrong? What if he recognizes you? Elena smiled, but it wasn't the warm, genuine smile that Marcus used to love. It was something sharper, more dangerous. "Then I guess we'll find out what kind of man my husband really is when he's cornered. What would you do in Elena's place? Would you confront the betrayal head-on, or would you choose to witness the full extent of the deception first? Sometimes, the truth we think we want is nothing compared to the truth we actually need. If you're finding yourself drawn into this story, please show some love. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's such a simple gesture, but for me, it means everything. It tells me that these stories matter to you, that they touch something real in your own experiences, and that you want to see more. And remember, some stories are so deeply personal, so close to my heart, that I cannot share them here on YouTube. But if you subscribe to my private newsletter, the link is right there in the description. You'll receive those special stories directly, the ones about courage, about justice, about what happens when ordinary people decide they've had enough. The next morning arrived with deceptive beauty. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sterling penthouse, casting golden rectangles across the marble floors that Elena had once loved to walk barefoot across. Now, as she stood in her walk-in closet at 7 a.m., those same floors felt cold and foreign beneath her feet. Elena stared at herself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Gone was the perfectly styled hair. She had pulled it back into a severe bun and covered it with a simple headscarf. Gone was a designer makeup routine that had been part of her morning ritual for years. Instead, her face was clean, almost stark, with just enough concealer to hide the evidence of a sleepless night spent crying and planning. The clothes felt like a costume from another life. A plain black dress that she had bought years ago for a charity event where she was supposed to blend into background while serving, an event she had ultimately skipped when Marcus surprised her with a weekend in the Hamptons instead. Black flats that she had never worn, their soles still pristine. An apron that Carmen had brought from her own supplies. "You look—" Carmen paused, searching for the right words as she helped Elena adjust the apron strings. Different, very different. Elena turned to face the mirror again. The transformation was startling. The confident socialite who commanded attention at every gathering had vanished. In her place stood someone who could easily be overlooked, dismissed, treated as invisible. "Good," Elena said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest. "That's exactly what I need." They had spent the early morning hours choreographing the deception. Carmen had called Marcus's office at 6 a.m., leaving a message with his assistant saying she had come down with food poisoning and wouldn't be able to work today. She suggested that the temporary agency she had used before could send someone over, someone named Maria Gonzalez. Marcus had texted back within an hour. "Fine. Just make sure whoever comes is discreet and stays out of the way. V is coming over around noon." The casual way he referred to his mistress, just V, as if she were an established part of his routine, made Elena's stomach turn, but it also steeled her resolve. At 10:30 a.m., Carmen left through the service entrance, carrying a small overnight bag. She would spend the day at her sister's apartment in Queens, her phone ready in case Elena needed her for any reason. Before she left, she had gripped Elena's hands tightly. "Mrs. Sterling, you don't have to do this. We have enough proof already. You could just—" "I need to see it myself," Elena had said firmly. "I need to watch him choose her over me in our home, so that I never doubt my decision to leave him." Now, alone in the apartment that had been her sanctuary for 5 years, Elena felt the weight of what she was about to do. This wasn't just about catching Marcus in the act. It was about witnessing complete scope of his disrespect, his callousness, his willingness to defile everything they had built together. At 11:45 a.m., she heard Marcus's key in the lock. Elena was in the kitchen, her hands busy with unnecessary tasks, wiping already clean counters, organizing already organized spice racks. When he walked in, he looked exactly as he always did when he was excited about something. His step had more spring, his shoulders were straighter, and there was a brightness in his eyes that she realized, with sickening clarity, she hadn't seen directed at her in months. "You must be Maria," he said without really looking at her, already moving toward the refrigerator to check on the champagne. "Carmen said the agency was sending someone. I need the apartment to be perfect today. I'm having an important business meeting." Elena kept her head down, her voice carefully modulated to match the accent Carmen had suggested she use. "Yes, sir. I understand. What would you like me to do?" "Just stay busy and out of the way. Clean whatever needs cleaning. There are fresh flowers being delivered at noon. Arrange those nicely. And when my colleague arrives, make yourself scarce. We'll need privacy." The way he said colleague made Elena want to throw something at his head. Instead, she nodded submissively. "Of course, sir." Marcus disappeared into the bedroom to shower and change. Elena could hear him humming, actually humming, a song she recognized as one they had danced at their wedding. The irony was so cruel, it took her breath away. At exactly 12:03 p.m., the doorbell rang. Elena answered it, her heart pounding so hard she was certain it must be visible through her dress. Standing in the hallway was a woman who looked exactly like what Elena had imagined and nothing like what she had prepared herself for. Victoria Chun was beautiful, but not in the classic way that Elena had expected. She was petite, probably no more than 5 feet 4 inches, with straight black hair that fell to her shoulders and expertly applied makeup that enhanced her almond-shaped eyes. She wore a red dress that was just expensive enough to be tasteful but just tight enough to be provocative, and she carried herself with the confidence of a woman who was used to getting what she wanted. But what struck Elena most was how young she looked. Not just younger than Elena, but young in a way that spoke of someone who had never been deeply hurt, never been truly disappointed, never learned that the world could be cruel and unfair. There was something almost innocent in her excitement as she practically bounced on her toes, waiting for the door to open. "Hi," Victoria said brightly, looking past Elena as if she weren't there. "I'm here to see Marcus." "Please come in, miss," Elena managed, stepping aside and keeping her eyes downcast. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you." Victoria swept past her, leaving a trail of expensive perfume that Elena recognized. Chanel No. 5, the same perfume Elena herself wore. Marcus had bought it for Victoria. The same signature scent he had chosen for his wife. He had also chosen for his mistress. The betrayal cut deeper than Elena had thought possible. "Marcus," Victoria called out, her voice echoing through the apartment with familiarity that suggested she had been here many times before. "I'm here." Marcus emerged from the bedroom, and Elena watched from the kitchen as he transformed. The polite but distant demeanor he had shown Maria melted away, replaced by a warmth and passion that Elena recognized from their early days together. He strode across the room and swept Victoria into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "God, I missed you," he murmured into her hair. It felt like forever. "It's been 3 days," Victoria giggled, but she melted into his embrace with equal fervor. Elena gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, her knuckles white. 3 days. He had seen this woman 3 days ago, while Elena was getting ready for her spa retreat, while she was excitedly telling him about the meditation classes she wanted to try. "Are we really alone?" Victoria asked, glancing around the apartment. "Just us and the maid," Marcus said dismissively. "She'll stay out of our way." The way he said the maid, as if Elena were a piece of furniture, an object without feelings or awareness, made something cold and sharp settle in her chest. She had become invisible in her own home, dismissed by her own husband. "Good," Victoria purred, running her hands up Marcus's chest. "Because I have plans for you, Mr. Sterling." They moved to the living room, and Elena forced herself to continue her cleaning routine, staying close enough to observe but far enough to maintain the illusion that she wasn't really there. She dusted picture frames that held photos of Marcus and Elena's wedding, their honeymoon, their anniversary celebrations, all while Marcus and Victoria kissed passionately on the sofa just feet away. "I love this place," Victoria said during a break in their kissing, looking around the apartment with proprietorial satisfaction. "It's like something out of a magazine." "It could be yours too, you know," Marcus said, stroking her hair. "I've been thinking more and more about what we talked about making this permanent." Elena's hand froze on the picture frame she was dusting. A photo of her and Marcus at last year's charity gala, both of them smiling at the camera with what looked like genuine happiness. "Really?" Victoria's voice was breathless with excitement. "You mean it?" "I'm tired of sneaking around," Marcus said, his voice taking on a tone Elena had heard him use in business meetings, decisive, confident, slightly ruthless. "Elena and I, we've grown apart. We're different people than we were when we got married. It happens." The casual way he dismissed their 5-year marriage, their history, their vows, hit Elena like a physical blow. "It happens," as if their love had been nothing more than a business venture that had simply stopped being profitable. "But the divorce," Victoria said, though she didn't sound particularly concerned. "Won't it be complicated?" Marcus laughed, and the sound made Elena's blood run cold. "Elena's not exactly a fighter. She's never even balanced a checkbook. She has no idea how our finances work, no idea about the prenup her lawyer didn't read carefully enough. She'll get enough to live comfortably, but nothing that will really hurt me." Elena felt something shift inside her chest. The prenup. She remembered signing it, remembered her lawyer, a friend of Marcus's. She realized now, assuring her it was standard and nothing to worry about. She had trusted completely, signed without question, because she had believed she was entering a partnership that would last forever. "You're terrible," Victoria said, but she was smiling as she said it. "Poor Elena. She has no idea what's coming." "Poor Elena," Marcus agreed, but there was no sympathy in his voice. Only the satisfied tone of someone who had outmaneuvered an opponent. "She's been living in a fantasy world for years. It'll probably be good for her to finally face reality." Elena continued dusting, her movements mechanical, while inside she felt something fundamental rearranging itself. The woman who had boarded a plane to California, the woman who had trusted blindly and loved unconditionally, was dissolving like salt in water. In her place, something harder and more calculating was taking shape. "I'm starving," Victoria announced, stretching like a cat. "Didn't you promise to cook for me?" "I did indeed," Marcus said, standing and offering her his hand. "How do you feel about lobster thermidor?" Elena's favorite dish. The meal Marcus had prepared for their first anniversary. The one he claimed was their special meal that he had never made for anyone else. Another lie. As Marcus led Victoria toward the kitchen, Elena quickly moved to the living room, beginning to dust the coffee table with careful, subservient movements. But her position allowed her to watch and listen as Marcus began preparing the meal that had once been a symbol of their unique love. "Can I help?" Victoria asked, perching on one of the kitchen stools. "Just sit there and look beautiful," Marcus said, kissing her forehead. "You're my inspiration." Elena had heard those exact words before, 5 years ago, when Marcus had cooked the same meal for her. She wondered how many other women had received the same unique treatment, heard the same original lines, experienced the same special gestures. "Maria," Marcus called out suddenly, making Elena's heart skip. "Bring us some champagne glasses. The good crystal ones in the dining room cabinet." Elena set down her dust cloth and moved to the dining room, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for the glasses. These were their wedding crystal, a gift from Marcus's grandmother, each piece etched with their initials. She and Marcus had used these glasses to toast their marriage, their anniversaries, every major milestone in their relationship. Now she was serving them to her husband and his mistress. As she carried the glasses to the kitchen, she heard Victoria ask, "What's your wife like? I mean, really like?" Elena froze just outside the kitchen doorway, straining to hear Marcus's response. "Elena?" Marcus laughed, and the sound was casual, dismissive. "She's sweet, I guess. Naive. She sees the world the way she wants it to be, not the way it actually is. She thinks our marriage is some kind of fairy tale." "That sounds kind of sad," Victoria said, though her tone suggested she didn't find it sad at all. "It is sad," Marcus agreed, "but it's not my job to manage her fantasies. I tried to be what she wanted for a while, but I got tired pretending to be someone I'm not." Elena entered the kitchen and set the glasses on the counter, her face carefully blank. Inside, she was cataloging every word, every dismissal, every casual cruelty. This was who Marcus really was when he thought no one who mattered was listening. "The champagne's in the fridge," Marcus told her without looking up from the lobster he was preparing. "Open it and pour 2 glasses." Elena moved to the refrigerator and retrieved the Dom Perignon, the bottle Marcus had bought specifically for this afternoon with Victoria. As she worked the cork free with hands that had opened champagne at countless celebrations, she thought about all the times she had toasted Marcus's successes, their anniversaries, their dreams for the future. The cork came free with a soft pop, and Elena poured the golden liquid into the crystal glasses that bore her own initials. "Perfect," Marcus said, taking the glasses and handing one to Victoria. "To new beginnings." "To getting what we deserve," Victoria replied, clinking her glass against his. They drank, and Victoria immediately demanded that Elena refill their glasses. Then again, and again. As the afternoon wore on and the alcohol flowed, their behavior became increasingly bold, increasingly disrespectful. "Maria," Victoria called out imperiously as Elena was organizing the living room bookshelf. "My feet are killing me. Come give them a massage." Elena felt her face burn with humiliation, but she forced herself to walk over to where Victoria was lounging on the sofa, Elena's sofa, in Elena's living room. "I don't think that's..." Elena started, but Marcus cut her off. "Just do what she asks," he said sharply. "We're paying for your services today." Elena knelt on the floor and began massaging Victoria's feet, her wedding ring catching the light as her hands worked. Victoria sighed with pleasure and let her head fall back against the cushions. "This is nice," Victoria murmured. "I could get used to this level of service." "You will," Marcus said, his voice full of promise. "Once we're together officially, you'll have whatever you want." Elena continued the massage, her mind carefully cataloging every moment of this humiliation. Victoria's perfectly pedicured toes, the way she moaned with pleasure at Elena's touch, the satisfied smile on Marcus's face as he watched his wife unknowingly serve his mistress. "Maria," Victoria said suddenly, "be a dear and run me a bath. I want to freshen up before dinner." "A bath?" "In Elena's bathroom, in Elena's tub, with Elena's bath salts and Elena's candles." "Of course, miss," Elena managed, rising from her position on the floor. She walked to the master bathroom on unsteady legs, her whole body trembling with suppressed rage and humiliation. This was her sanctuary, the place where she had spent countless hours preparing for evenings with Marcus, where she had soaked away the stress of difficult days, where she had gotten ready on the morning of their wedding. Now she was drawing a bath for the woman who was destroying her marriage. Elena turned on the taps and added bath salts, her favorite lavender blend that Marcus had given her last Christmas. She lit candles around the tub, the same candles she had lit for romantic evenings with her husband. She arranged fresh towels and set out the plush bathrobe that had been a gift from Marcus on their 3rd anniversary. Every action felt like a betrayal of herself, but she forced herself to continue. She needed to see how far this would go, needed to witness the complete scope of their disrespect. "It's ready, miss," Elena called out, returning to the living room. Victoria rose from the sofa with the languid grace of someone who is used to being served. Wonderful. Marcus, darling, care to join me? Elena watched her husband's face light up with anticipation. I thought you'd never ask. They walked toward the master bathroom together, Marcus's arm around Victoria's waist, their heads close together as they whispered and laughed. Elena stood in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of their afternoon. Empty champagne glasses, the half-eaten lobster thermidor, Victoria's discarded shoes on the Persian rug. In the distance, she could hear water splashing, could hear Victoria's delighted laughter, could hear Marcus's voice murmuring words of love and desire that had once been meant only for her. Elena sank onto the sofa and put her head in her hands. This was worse than she had imagined. It wasn't just an affair, it was a complete replacement. Marcus wasn't just cheating on her. He was auditioning her replacement, letting another woman test drive the life Elena had built. But even as the humiliation washed over her, even as she felt more degraded and invisible than she ever had in her life, Elena also felt something else grow inside her. Clarity. For the first time in months, she could see her situation with perfect, crystalline clarity. Marcus didn't love her. He didn't respect her. He had never seen her as an equal partner, but rather as a beautiful accessory to his successful life. And when he had grown tired of that accessory, he had simply gone shopping for a newer model. Elena Sterling, the real Elena Sterling, not the submissive maid she was pretending to be, would not stand for this. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever been so betrayed that you questioned everything you thought you knew about someone you loved? Sometimes we have to be stripped of everything we thought we were before we can discover who we really have the strength to become. The sound of Marcus's key in the front door at 6:30 p.m. shouldn't have surprised Elena. After all, she had been listening to every sound in the apartment for hours, cataloging every laugh, every whispered endearment, every splash in the bathroom where her husband and his mistress had spent the better part of the afternoon. But it did surprise her, because Marcus was already home. Elena froze in the kitchen, where she had been mechanically cleaning dishes that were already clean, and felt her blood run cold. If Marcus was in the bathroom with Victoria, then who was opening the front door? Elena, are you home early? Her husband's voice, calling from the entryway, sent ice water through her veins. But Marcus was supposed to be in the bathroom. Marcus was supposed to be with Victoria. Unless understanding hit her like a lightning bolt. The man in the bathroom wasn't Marcus. Elena's mind raced as she heard footsteps in the hallway. Marcus's distinctive walk, the way his Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floors. She glanced toward the master bedroom, where she could still hear water running and muffled conversation. Victoria wasn't here with Marcus. She was here with someone else. The deception was even deeper than Elena had realized. Victoria wasn't just having an affair with Marcus. She was playing multiple men, using Elena's home as her playground while Elena was supposed to be safely out of the way. Maria? Marcus's voice was closer now, heading toward the kitchen. What are you still doing here? I thought I told you to finish up by 5. Elena's hand shook as she turned to face the man she had loved for 5 years, the man she had married, the man who had just walked into his own home to find his mistress in bed with another man and didn't even know it yet. There was extra cleaning, sir, she managed, keeping her voice steady and her eyes downcast. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Marcus barely glanced at her, already reaching for his phone. Well, wrap it up. I'm expecting someone, and I need the apartment to myself. Elena watched as he scrolled through his messages, presumably texting Victoria to let her know he was home. She watched his face change from casual dismissal to confusion as his messages went unanswered. That's strange, he muttered, then called out loudly. Elena, are you home? Your car's in the garage. The water sound from the bathroom suddenly stopped. Elena heard urgent whispers, the sound of someone moving quickly through water, the soft thud of feet hitting the bathroom floor. Marcus's confusion deepened. Elena never comes home early from her retreats. She usually extends them, if anything. He looked at Elena suspiciously. Did someone else come home today? Did you see Mrs. Sterling? Before Elena could answer, the bathroom door opened and Victoria appeared in the hallway, wrapped in Elena's bathrobe, her hair wet and her face flushed. Behind her, Elena caught a glimpse of a tall, dark-haired man she didn't recognize. Definitely not Marcus, frantically pulling on his clothes. The moment stretched out like a held breath. Marcus stared at Victoria. Victoria stared at Marcus. And Elena stood in the kitchen, watching her husband realize that his mistress was cheating on him with someone else. Victoria, Marcus's voice was strangled, disbelieving. What are you doing here? And who? Marcus. Victoria's voice was bright with panic, trying for casual but failing completely. You're early. I thought you weren't coming until... Who was that man in my bathroom? Marcus demanded, his voice rising. The stranger emerged from the bathroom, fully dressed but clearly uncomfortable. He was younger than Marcus, probably in his early 30s, with a kind of casual confidence that suggested he was used to situations like this. Elena realized with a sick feeling that this was probably not Victoria's first rodeo. Look, man, the stranger said, holding up his hands. I didn't know she was married. She told me she lived here alone. She doesn't live here at all. Marcus exploded. This is my home. My wife's home. Elena watched the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. Marcus's face was cycling through emotions: betrayal, rage, humiliation. The same emotions Elena had been feeling all day. But unlike Elena, Marcus had no idea that his wife was standing 10 feet away, witnessing his complete meltdown. Baby, I can explain, Victoria said, moving toward Marcus with her hands outstretched. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. Marcus shouted. You're cheating on me. In my own home. In my wife's bathroom. The irony was so thick Elena almost choked on it. Marcus was outraged that his mistress was cheating on him, apparently oblivious to the hypocrisy of his position. Now, wait just a minute, the stranger interjected, his voice taking on an edge. You said you were married, but Victoria told me you were getting divorced. She said your wife knew about us and was fine with it. My wife doesn't know anything. Marcus snarled. Because there's nothing to know. Victoria is my... He stopped, apparently realizing that explaining his affair to his mistress's other lover was not a conversation he was prepared to have. Elena felt something snap inside her chest. The careful control she had maintained all day, the submissive performance, the quiet endurance. It all crumbled in an instant. She was done being invisible. She was done being lied to. She was done watching other people control her narrative. Actually, Elena said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade, your wife knows everything. The room fell silent. Marcus spun around, his eyes focusing on Elena for the first time all day, really looking at her, taking in her face, her posture, the way she was no longer hunched over with subservience, but standing tall with her shoulders back. What did you say? He whispered. Elena reached up and pulled off the headscarf, letting her auburn hair tumble down around her shoulders. She untied the apron and let it drop to the floor. She lifted her chin and looked her husband directly in the eyes with all the authority of the woman who owned the home they were standing in. I said, your wife knows everything, Marcus. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. Elena watched his face go through a rapid succession of expressions: confusion, disbelief, dawning horror, and finally, complete panic. Elena? His voice cracked on her name. But you're in California. You're at the retreat. I just talked to you yesterday. No, you talked to me 3 days ago. Since then, I've been getting quite an education. Elena's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. About Victoria. About your affair. About your plans for our future. About how naive and pathetic you think I am. Victoria, still clutching the bathrobe around herself, looked back and forth between Marcus and Elena with growing alarm. Wait, this is your wife? This is Elena? Yes, Elena said, turning her attention to the woman who'd been humiliating her in her own home. I'm Elena, the woman whose feet you had me massage, whose bathroom you've been using, whose bed you've been sleeping in. The color drained from Victoria's face. Oh my God, you were the maid. You were here the whole time. I was here, Elena confirmed, watching, listening, learning exactly who my husband really is when he thinks no one important is watching. Marcus took a step toward her, his hands outstretched in supplication. Elena, please let me explain. Explain what? Elena's voice rose, all the rage and hurt and humiliation of the day finally breaking free. Explain how you brought your mistress into our home? Explain how you cooked our anniversary meal for another woman? Explain how you let her use our wedding crystal to toast your new beginning? You heard that. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I heard everything. Every dismissive comment about our marriage. Every cruel joke about how easy it will be to divorce me. Every plan you made for your future with her. Elena gestured toward Victoria, who was still standing frozen in the hallway. The stranger, clearly sensing that he had stumbled into a domestic apocalypse, began backing toward the door. Look, I'm just gonna... Oh no, Elena said, her voice sharp with authority. You stay right where you are. You're part of this now. She turned back to Marcus, who was looking around the apartment as if seeing for the first time, perhaps realizing how many of his lies were now exposed, how completely his deception had unraveled. 5 years, Elena said, her voice breaking slightly. 5 years of marriage. And this is how little I meant to you. I gave up my career for you. I built my entire life around supporting yours. I trusted you completely, defended you to anyone who suggested that successful men like you couldn't be faithful. Elena, please. I'm not finished. The words exploded from her with such force that Marcus actually stepped back. Do you have any idea what it felt like to massage another woman's feet in my own living room? To draw a bath for your mistress in my bathroom? To serve champagne in our wedding crystal to the woman you're planning to replace me with? Marcus's face was gray now, the full scope of what Elena had witnessed clearly sinking in. You saw all of that. I lived all of that. While you dismissed me as just a maid. While you talked about me like I was a naive child who needed to face reality. I was standing 3 feet away from you, watching you destroy our marriage with your own hands. Victoria finally found her voice. Elena, I didn't know you would be... You didn't know I would be what? Elena whirled on her. Home? In my own apartment? You thought you could just move in and take over my life while I was conveniently out of the way? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Elena's voice was rising with each word. You thought you could test drive my life, sleep in my bed, use my things, and play house with my husband. And when you got bored with Marcus, you brought your backup plan here too. She gestured toward the stranger, who was still trying to edge toward the door. How many men are you juggling, Victoria? How many promises of new beginnings have you made? That's not... I wasn't. Victoria's composure was completely gone now, her face blotchy with tears and panic. Marcus seemed to be having his own revelation about Victoria's character, his eyes moving between her and the stranger with growing understanding. You told him I was getting divorced? You told him Elena knew about us. I had to tell him something. Victoria snapped, her desperation making her cruel. What was I supposed to say? That you were cheating on your wife with me while I was cheating on you with him. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. Marcus staggered back, as if he'd been physically hit. You were, we were... He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Having an affair while I was having affairs, Victoria finished flatly. Yes, Marcus. Did you really think you were the only one? Elena watched her husband's world crumble in real time, watched him realize that he had blown up his marriage for a woman who had never been faithful to him either. The poetic justice of it might have been satisfying if Elena hadn't been so devastated by the wreckage of her own life. So let me make sure I understand this correctly, Elena said, her voice now deadly calm. Marcus, you've been cheating on me with Victoria for months, planning to divorce me and marry her. Victoria, you've been cheating on Marcus with... She looked at the stranger. What's your name? Derek, the man mumbled. With Derek, and probably others. And Derek, you thought Victoria was a single woman who lived alone in a penthouse apartment. Elena looked around at the 3 of them. Does that about cover it? No one answered. No one seemed capable of answering. Well then, Elena said, smoothing down her hair and straightening her shoulders. I think it's time we sorted out exactly what happens next. Have you ever watched someone's lies catch up with them in real time? Have you ever seen a moment when someone who thought they were playing everyone else realizes they were the one being played? Sometimes the truth has a way of revealing itself in the most unexpected ways, and justice comes from the most unlikely sources. Elena Sterling stood in the center of her living room, surrounded by the wreckage of 3 people's lives, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Complete and total control. For months, she had been a passenger in her own life, unknowingly dancing to the tune of her husband's deception. But now, in this moment of absolute chaos, she was finally in the driver's seat. The silence stretched out like a taut wire, broken only by the sound of Victoria's ragged breathing and the distant hum of traffic from the street below. Derek had managed to inch closer to the door, clearly hoping to escape this domestic nightmare. But Elena's sharp gaze pinned him in place. Derek, Elena said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who owned the ground everyone else was standing on. You seem like you might actually be an innocent party in this mess. So I'm going to give you exactly 30 seconds to collect whatever belongings you have here and leave. After that, I'm calling building security. Derek didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his jacket from a hallway chair and practically sprinted toward the door. Look, lady, I'm really sorry. I had no idea. "25 seconds," Elena said coolly. The front door slammed behind him with a finality that seemed to echo through the apartment. Now it was just the three of them, Elena, Marcus, and Victoria, standing in the ruins of what had once been a marriage. Victoria was the first to try to salvage the situation. She straightened her shoulders and attempted to regain some of her earlier confidence, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the fact that she was still wearing Elena's bathrobe. "Look, Elena," she said, her voice taking on a reasonable tone, as if they were colleagues discussing a business disagreement. "I know this looks bad, but you have to understand, Marcus and I, we have something real. What you walked in on with Derek, that was just physical. It didn't mean anything." Elena stared at her for a long moment, genuinely amazed by the audacity. "You think that makes it better? You think the fact that you were using my husband for emotions and that other man for sex somehow makes the situation less appalling? That's not what I—" "And you're wearing my bathrobe," Elena continued, her voice getting sharper. "You're standing in my living room, in my bathrobe, after spending the afternoon in my bed with another man, trying to explain to me why your affair with my husband is justified." Victoria's face flushed red. "It's not like you and Marcus were happy. He told me your marriage was practically over, that you two barely even talked anymore." "Stop." Elena's voice cut through Victoria's words like a knife. "Just stop talking. Every word that comes out of your mouth makes this worse." She turned her attention to Marcus, who had been standing frozen throughout this exchange, his face cycling through expressions of shock, betrayal, and dawning realization of just how completely he had destroyed his life. "And you," Elena said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "You stood right here in this room and told your mistress that I was naive, that I lived in a fantasy world, that I would be easy to divorce because I was too trusting to fight back." Marcus tried to speak, but Elena held up a hand to silence him. "You cooked her our anniversary meal. You gave her champagne and our wedding crystal. You let her disrespect me in my own home while I was disguised as your servant. And now you want to what? Apologize? Explain? Make this right somehow?" "Elena, please," Marcus finally managed, his voice hoarse with desperation. "I know I've made mistakes." "Mistakes?" Elena's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk or double-booking dinner plans. What you did was a systematic betrayal of everything we built together. What you did was calculated, deliberate, and cruel." She walked to the window and looked out at the Manhattan skyline, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. For 5 years, she had looked out this window and felt like she was on top of the world. Now she felt like she was surveying the battlefield of her former life. "You want to know what the worst part is?" she said, not turning around. "It's not even the cheating. It's the contempt. The way you talked about me like I was a child, like I was some kind of burden you had to manage. The way you dismissed our entire marriage as if it meant nothing." She turned back to face them, and both Marcus and Victoria flinched at the cold fury in her eyes. "So here's what's going to happen," Elena said, her voice steady and implacable. "Victoria, you're going to go into my bedroom. You're going to put on your own clothes, and you're going to leave. You're never coming back here. You're never contacting Marcus again. If I see you anywhere near my husband or my home, I will make your life very, very difficult." "You can't just—" Victoria started. "I absolutely can." Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. "Do you know what I used to do before I married Marcus? I was an interior designer. Do you know what that job taught me? How to research everything. Property records, financial documents, business licenses, tax returns. I know how to dig up information that people thought was buried." Victoria's face went pale. "I spent some time on my laptop this morning while you and Derek were busy." Elena continued. "Did you know that your work visa expires in 6 months? Did you know that having an affair with your boss could be considered a violation of your employment terms? Did you know that Marcus's company has a very strict morality clause in their contracts?" The color drained completely from Victoria's face. "You wouldn't. Try me." Elena's voice was ice cold. "I have photos of you in my home, in my clothes, with another man. I have documentation of your affair with Marcus. I have enough evidence to destroy your career, your visa status, and your reputation. So when I tell you to leave and never come back, I suggest you listen very, very carefully." Victoria looked desperately at Marcus, clearly hoping he would defend her, protect her, stand up to his wife on her behalf. But Marcus was staring at Elena with something approaching awe, as if he was seeing her clearly for the first time in years. "Marcus." Victoria's voice was small, pleading. Marcus looked at her, then back at Elena, and Elena could see the moment he realized that his mistress had never been worth destroying his marriage for, that he had traded a woman of substance for a shallow opportunist who had been playing him from the beginning. "You should go, Victoria," he said quietly. Victoria's face crumpled with rage and humiliation. "This is ridiculous. You can't treat me like this. Marcus, you promised me. Get out." Elena's voice was quiet, but carried absolute authority. "Get out of my home. Get out of our lives. And if you're smart, you'll get out of the country before I decide to follow through on those threats." Victoria looked around the room one more time, as if searching for some avenue of escape or negotiation, but finding none. With as much dignity as she could muster, while wearing another woman's bathrobe, she stalked toward the bedroom to collect her clothes. "And Victoria?" Elena called after her. "Leave the bathrobe. It's mine." The bedroom door slammed, and Elena and Marcus were alone for the first time since their world had exploded. Marcus looked at his wife, really looked at her, and seemed to see her clearly for the first time in months. The woman standing before him wasn't the naive, trusting wife he had dismissed and taken for granted. This was someone with steel in her spine and fire in her eyes, someone who had just systematically dismantled his mistress with the precision of a surgeon. "Elena," he said softly, No. Elena held up a hand. "You don't get to talk yet. I'm not done." She walked to the bar cart and poured herself a glass of wine, a good vintage, one that Marcus had been saving for a special occasion. She took a sip and let the silence stretch out until Marcus was practically vibrating with anxiety. 15 years, Elena said finally. "I knew you for 10 years before we got married, then 5 years of marriage. Half my adult life has been built around loving you, supporting you, being the perfect partner for your perfect life." Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but Elena's sharp look silenced him. "I gave up my career because you said you wanted a wife who could travel with you, who could entertain your clients, who could be available when you needed me. I gave up my independence, my financial security, my professional identity, all because I believed we were building something together." She took another sip of wine, her eyes never leaving his face. "But we weren't building something together, were we, Marcus? I was building your life while you were shopping for my replacement. That's not, Elena, that's not how it was, isn't it?" Elena's voice rose slightly. "You told Victoria our marriage was practically over. You told her I was naive and easy to manipulate. You planned our entire divorce without once trying to fix our problems or even telling me you thought we had problems." Marcus's shoulders sagged. "You're right. God, Elena, you're absolutely right. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know when I became this person. I know when," Elena said, her voice steady and sure. "It was when you started making enough money to think you could buy anything you wanted, including a new wife. It was when you started believing your own press about being some kind of financial genius who deserved whatever he desired. It was when you stopped seeing me as your partner and started seeing me as an accessory that you could upgrade when you got bored." The bedroom door opened, and Victoria emerged, fully dressed and carrying her purse. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the confrontation and the knowledge that she had been outmaneuvered completely. "This isn't over," she said to Elena, though her voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Elena replied calmly. "It's completely over. And if you think otherwise, I encourage you to test me. I promise you won't like the results." Victoria shot one last desperate look at Marcus, but he was staring at the floor, unable or unwilling to meet her eyes. With a sound of disgust, she stalked toward the door. "You deserve each other," she spat as she left. "A cheating husband and a vindictive wife." The door slammed behind her with such force that the crystal glasses on the bar cart chimed against each other. Elena and Marcus stood in the sudden silence, 5 years of marriage and 15 years of history hanging between them like a bridge that had been burned from both ends. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked quietly. Elena set down her wine glass and walked to the mantelpiece, where their wedding photo sat in its silver frame. She picked it up and studied it. 2 young people who had believed in forever, who had promised to love and honor each other through everything life could throw at them. "Now," she said, setting the photo face down on the mantelpiece, "you pack your things and you leave." Marcus's head snapped up. "Elena, please, can't we talk about this? Can't we try to work through this?" "Work through what, Marcus? Your affair? Your lies? Your complete contempt for me and our marriage? Your plans to divorce me without even trying to save what we had?" "I was confused. I was going through something." "Stop." Elena's voice was firm, but not angry anymore. She sounded tired, defeated in a way that was somehow worse than rage. Just stop. You made your choice when you decided Victoria was worth more than our marriage. You made your choice every time you lied to me, every time you brought her into our home, every time you planned a future that didn't include me. She turned to face him fully, and Marcus was shocked to see that she wasn't crying. Her eyes were clear and determined. I loved you, Marcus. I loved you so much that I would have forgiven almost anything if you had come to me honestly. If you had told me you were unhappy. If you had asked for counseling. If you had given us a chance to fight for what we had. But you didn't do any of those things. I can change, Marcus said desperately. Elena, I can be better. I can be the man you married. The man I married wouldn't have done this in the first place. Elena's voice was gentle but implacable. And I'm not the woman you married anymore either. Today changed me, Marcus. Watching you dismiss me, watching you plan to discard me, watching you treat me like I was nothing, that changed something fundamental inside me. She walked to the window again, looking out at the city that had been their playground for so many years. The prenup you're so confident about, the one you think protects you, I had my own lawyer review it this afternoon, while you were busy with Victoria and Derek. Turns out that adultery voids quite a few of those protective clauses, especially when there's photographic evidence. Marcus went very still. What photographic evidence? Elena smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Did you really think Carmen just happened to get food poisoning today? Did you really think I just happened to come home early from my retreat? Carmen called me Marcus. She told me everything, and she's been documenting your affair for weeks. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Carmen knew. Carmen saw. Carmen photographed. Carmen recorded. And Carmen is prepared to testify about everything she witnessed if this divorce gets ugly. Elena turned back to him. So you can try to fight me on the settlement, if you want. You can try to claim that your prenup protects your assets. But I have enough evidence of your infidelity to take you for everything you're worth. You planned this. The whole thing today, you planned it. I survived it, Elena corrected. I endured watching my husband choose another woman over me in my own home, and I survived it. And now I'm choosing myself. She walked to the front closet and pulled out a suitcase, one of the expensive leather ones Marcus had bought for their honeymoon. You have until tomorrow evening to pack whatever you need and find somewhere else to stay. After that, you can coordinate with my lawyer to collect the rest of your things. Marcus stared at the suitcase as if it were a snake. Elena, please, don't do this. We can fix this. No, Marcus, we can't, because there is no we anymore. There probably hasn't been for months, but I was too trusting to see it. She set the suitcase at his feet. The man I married, the man I loved, wouldn't have betrayed me like this. So either he's gone, or he was never real in the first place. Marcus picked up the suitcase with trembling hands. Where am I supposed to go? I honestly don't care. Elena's voice was matter-of-fact, without malice but without warmth either. You can stay with Victoria. If she'll have you after learning about her other boyfriends, you can stay at a hotel. You can stay with one of your business friends. That's not my problem anymore. She walked him to the door, and Marcus paused on the threshold. Elena, I know I don't deserve it, but do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Elena considered the question seriously, looking at this man who had been the center of her world for so many years, the man who had promised to love and cherish her, who had stood before God and their families and friends and vowed to be faithful until death parted them. I don't know, she said honestly, but I know I'll never trust you again. And without trust, forgiveness is just an empty word. Marcus nodded, his face crumpling with the weight of what he had lost. I love you, Elena. Despite everything, I do love you. I know you think you do, Elena replied. But love isn't just a feeling, Marcus. It's a choice. It's choosing your partner every day, protecting them, putting their needs alongside your own, and you chose someone else. She closed the door behind him and engaged all the locks, the deadbolt, the chain, the security lock. Then she leaned against the door and closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the day, the weight of her shattered marriage, the weight of an uncertain future settling on her shoulders. But underneath all that weight, she felt something else, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt free. Have you ever had to choose between forgiving someone who betrayed you and protecting yourself from further harm? Have you ever discovered that the person you thought you were, trusting, accommodating, willing to sacrifice for love, wasn't actually serving you anymore? Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is choose ourselves, even when it means walking away from everything we thought we wanted. If this story is resonating with you, if Elena's journey is speaking to something in your own experience, please show your support by hitting that like button. Your engagement means everything to creators like me. It's how we know these stories matter, how we know they're helping people feel less alone in their struggles. 3 weeks later, Elena Sterling stood in the same spot by the window where she had discovered the full scope of her husband's betrayal, but the woman looking out at Manhattan's skyline was fundamentally different from the one who had answered Carmen's desperate phone call in California. Gone was the perfectly coiffed socialite who had spent years crafting the image of marital bliss. In her place stood someone with shorter hair. She had cut herself in a moment of symbolic liberation, and clothes that were elegant but practical rather than designed to complement Marcus's image. She wore less makeup, smiled more genuinely, and moved through the apartment with the confidence of someone who finally owned her own space completely. The apartment itself had undergone subtle but significant changes. The wedding photos that had once adorned every surface were gone, stored away in a closet until Elena could decide what to do with them. The formal dining set that Marcus had insisted they needed for entertaining clients had been replaced with a smaller, more intimate table that actually fit Elena's lifestyle. The bar cart still held expensive liquor, but now it was wine that Elena actually enjoyed rather than the whiskey and cognac that Marcus had preferred. Carmen arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, as she had every day since Elena had asked her to return to work. But their relationship had evolved beyond employer and employee into something more complex, a partnership between two women who had survived a crisis together. "Good morning, Mrs. Sterling," Carmen said, though the formality was tempered with genuine warmth. "How did you sleep?" "Better," Elena admitted, and it was true. The nightmares about finding Marcus and Victoria together had faded, replaced by dreams about her future. Sometimes anxious dreams about uncertainty, but more often dreams about possibility. "The lawyer called this morning," Carmen said, setting down a cup of coffee prepared exactly the way Elena liked it. Another small luxury that felt revolutionary after years of conforming to Marcus's preferences. "Mr. Sterling signed the papers yesterday. The divorce will be final next week." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. "And the settlement?" "Better than you expected. His adultery and the prenup violations meant he couldn't fight you on much. The apartment is yours, obviously, plus half the investment accounts and a significant monthly support payment." Carmen paused. "You'll be very comfortable, Mrs. Sterling. You'll never have to worry about money." Financial security had never been Elena's primary concern. She had marketable skills and the intelligence to rebuild her career if necessary. But knowing that Marcus couldn't use economic pressure to control her decisions felt like another weight lifted from her shoulders. "What about Victoria?" Elena asked. Carmen's expression darkened slightly. Her work visa was revoked last week. Apparently, the company's investigation into her relationship with Mr. Sterling turned up some irregularities in her employment. She's been deported back to Hong Kong. Elena felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. Victoria had been manipulative and cruel, but she had also been young and ambitious in a system that rewarded women for using whatever tools they had available. Still, the consequences of her choices were hers to bear. And Marcus, living in a furnished apartment in Midtown. "I heard from Mrs. Patterson in 12B that he looks—" Carmen searched for the right words. "Diminished, like he's aged 10 years in 3 weeks." Elena didn't ask for more details. Marcus's journey toward understanding what he had lost was his to take alone. The intercom buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. Elena wasn't expecting anyone, but she had started embracing spontaneity in ways that would have terrified her during her marriage. "Mrs. Sterling, there's a delivery here for you. Flowers." Elena and Carmen exchanged glances. In the week since the confrontation, Marcus had sent dozens of flower arrangements, elaborate, expensive displays that Elena had instructed Carmen to donate to the hospital down the street. But when Carmen returned from the lobby, she was carrying something completely different. Instead of Marcus's typical ostentatious arrangements, this was a simple bouquet of wildflowers, daisies, baby's breath, and sunflowers, wrapped in brown paper with a handwritten note. Elena opened the card with curious fingers. The message was brief. "Thank you for showing me what real courage looks like. A friend who admires your strength." There was no signature, but Elena suspected it might be from Rebecca Morrison, an old college friend who had reached out after hearing through the social grapevine about Elena's divorce. Rebecca had gone through her own messy separation 2 years earlier and had become something of a mentor to Elena during this transition. Secret admirer? Carmen asked with a smile that was the first truly relaxed expression Elena had seen from her in months. Maybe, Elena said, arranging the wildflowers in a simple glass vase. They looked perfect on her kitchen counter, unpretentious and honest in a way that Marcus's gilt flowers never could be. Mrs. Sterling, Carmen said, her tone shifting to something more serious. I need to tell you something. Elena looked up from the flowers, noting the formal address and the nervous energy in Carmen's posture. What is it, Carmen? I've been offered another job. A family on the Upper West Side. Their regular housekeeper is retiring, and they're looking for someone permanent. The pay is better, and it's closer to my daughter's school. Elena felt a pang of loss, but immediately pushed it aside. Carmen had saved her marriage from ending in ignorance and betrayal. She had risked her own job security to give Elena the truth she needed. Elena would not repay that loyalty by trying to hold Carmen back. That's wonderful, Carmen. You should absolutely take it. But I don't want to leave you during this difficult time. Carmen. Elena reached across the counter and took the older woman's hands. You've already given me the most important thing you could give me. You gave me the truth. You gave me the chance to choose my own response to Marcus's betrayal instead of living in ignorance. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared to tell you. I thought you would hate me for destroying your marriage. You didn't destroy my marriage, Carmen. Marcus did that all by himself. You just made sure I didn't waste any more years living a lie. Elena stood up and walked to her purse, pulling out an envelope she had prepared weeks ago but hadn't found the right moment to give. This is for you, she said, handing it to Carmen. A bonus for your integrity and a reference letter that will help you get any job you want. Carmen opened the envelope and gasped. The check was for 6 months of her salary, enough to cover any gap between jobs and give her family some breathing room. Mrs. Sterling, this is too much. It's not nearly enough, Elena said firmly. Carmen, do you remember what you said to me that first day when I came back from California? When you were apologizing for not telling me sooner about Marcus? Carmen nodded, wiping tears from her cheeks. You said you were scared, that you were a coward. But Carmen, calling me that day was the bravest thing anyone has ever done for me. You risked your job, your security, your future, because you couldn't stand to watch me be deceived. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the city that was now truly hers to explore on her own terms. I spent 5 years of my marriage being what I thought Marcus wanted me to be. Agreeable, supportive, never making waves, never challenging him, never standing up for myself. I thought that was love. I thought that was being a good wife. She turned back to Carmen. But you showed me what real love looks like. Real love tells the hard truth, even when it's painful. Real love protects people from harm, even at personal cost. Real love chooses the other person's well-being over its own comfort. Carmen was crying openly now, but she was also smiling. You saved me, Carmen, not just from Marcus's betrayal, but from my own willingness to accept less than I deserved. You showed me that I was worth fighting for, even when I had forgotten how to fight for myself. Elena pulled Carmen into a hug, something that would have been unthinkable in the formal employer-employee relationship they had maintained during her marriage. So take the job, Elena said. Take the better pay and the better situation. You've earned every good thing that comes your way. When Carmen left that afternoon, her last official day as Elena's housekeeper, Elena found herself alone in the apartment for the first time since the confrontation. But unlike the crushing loneliness she had expected, she felt something closer to peace. She made herself a simple dinner, pasta with vegetables, nothing fancy, and ate it while reading a book she had been meaning to get to for months. She took a long bath in her own tub without thinking about Marcus or Victoria or Derek or anyone else who had contaminated the space. She went to bed early and slept through the night, without nightmares. The next morning, Elena woke up with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She had decisions to make about her future, but for the first time in a long time, they were truly her decisions. She could stay in New York and rebuild her interior design career. She could travel, something she put on hold during her marriage because Marcus preferred vacation destinations that offered business networking opportunities. She could go back to school, pursue interests she had set aside. She could date, eventually, when she felt ready to trust someone new. Or she could do something completely different, something she had never considered before. That afternoon, Elena made a phone call to Rebecca Morrison. Rebecca, it's Elena Sterling. I've been thinking about what you said about your nonprofit work, about using your experience to help other women going through difficult divorces. Elena, I'm so glad to hear from you. How are you holding up? I'm good. Really good, actually. And I think I'm ready to start the next chapter of my life. They talked for an hour about the organization Rebecca had started, about the resources available for women escaping difficult marriages, about the gap between what society expected women to endure and what they actually deserved. When Elena hung up the phone, she felt something she had almost forgotten existed: excitement about her future. That evening, as the sun set over Manhattan, Elena stood once again at her window. But this time, instead of looking out at a world that belonged to someone else, she was looking out at a world of possibilities. She thought about Marcus, probably sitting in his bland furnished apartment, finally understanding what he had lost. She thought about Victoria, halfway around the world, learning that actions have consequences. She thought about Carmen, starting a new job with a family who would hopefully appreciate her wisdom and integrity. And she thought about herself, no longer the perfect wife, no longer the supportive spouse who never made waves. She was Elena Sterling, and she belonged to no one but herself. The realization was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Elena raised her wine glass to the window, to the city, to her reflection looking back at her with clear, determined eyes. "Here's to new beginnings," she said aloud. "The real kind." And for the first time in years, when Elena Sterling smiled, it was entirely her own. This is what resilience looks like. Not the absence of pain, not the avoidance of difficult truths, but the willingness to face reality and choose your own response. Elena's story reminds us that sometimes the end of one dream is actually the beginning of a life we never knew we were brave enough to live. If Elena's journey has touched something in your own life, if her story has inspired you or given you courage or simply made you feel less alone, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support isn't just a number to me. It's confirmation that these stories matter, that sharing our struggles and our triumphs helps us all feel more connected and more hopeful. And remember, there are some stories that are too personal, too raw, too close to my heart to share on a public platform like YouTube. But if you want access to those deeper truths, those more intimate revelations about courage and healing and the messy, beautiful process of rebuilding your life after betrayal, subscribe to my private newsletter. The link is in the description below. And that's where I share the stories that can only be told in whispers, to people who understand that sometimes the most important truths are the hardest ones to hear. Thank you for taking this journey with Elena, with Carmen, and with me. Thank you for believing that everyone deserves to be loved with honesty, treated with respect, and given a chance to choose their own happiness. Until next time, remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and more deserving of true love than you know.